Hi, this is Kathy Ganatic. On September 27th around midnight, we have a lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces. The energy of this eclipse could shake us up a little bit. It could bring some new information in our life. As with all eclipses, new things may appear or disappear in whatever house in your chart is related to the eclipse. This is Pisces, right? So I'll talk at the end of the video, I'll go through each of the rising signs and talk about how this or what topic area of your life might be impacted by the eclipse. And yeah, I'll also share all of the sort of symbolism that comes with it. We have a Mercury Cazimi. I'll explain what that is. Uranus is really involved in the eclipse. So there's a lot to share. I hope you enjoy it. If you do, it'd be great if you could like and subscribe. I'm trying to grow my channel. So before we bring up the eclipse chart, let's just ground ourselves once again in what eclipses are. They happen at the new or the full moon. Some people say that eclipses are like new or full moons on steroids, extra powerful. It is true that the eclipse energy can bring sudden shifts in our life. I like to think of eclipses as karmic corrections. There's a symbolically, eclipses involve primary motion. This is a a philosophical idea that this uh, philosopher Aristotle had of primary motion of the sky involving the motion of God. Eclipses as well as retrogrades involve this primary motion. And so there's something about moments of eclipses and retrograde seasons where we get this opportunity, something may happen in our life to shake us up or ask us to revisit old themes and reconnect with our path. You could say the Tao in Taoism, the flow of life. So this particular eclipse is a full moon eclipse because lunar eclipses all always happen at the full moon. We just had a solar eclipse at the new moon a couple of weeks ago, and solar eclipses can have to do with solar figures in our life appearing or disappearing. In fact, in ancient times, that's kind of how astrology got started, is in ancient times, the sun and the moon kind of lit the way, the path for everyone, and were really much more important than they are in today's time. And so when the sun or the moon appeared to disappear from the sky, it was seen as this big omen, and people started noticing that there was a correlation between solar eclipses in particular and when leaders would rise or fall. And if we think about it, just a couple days, or excuse me, it was just yesterday, Dolly Parton, love Dolly Parton, passed. And the eclipse hit her rising degree, I believe, but it hit her chart in a really prominent way. And she was a queen, right? A real solar figure for all of us. So that's just to give you a sense of the importance of eclipses and why astrologers pay so much attention to these eclipse moments, because they can bring real shifts in our life, particularly again for all of us, whatever house is Pisces. You may find that over the last couple of years, you've been being asked to realign your energy around that topic of your life. The first eclipse in the Pisces in Pisces happened back in September of 2024. Then we had another eclipse in September of 2025, and now this is our last eclipse. So you can look back at the energy of those months or the time near those eclipses and think how it may have impacted your house. Again, we'll talk about which house it is for you and what topics are of your life at the end of the video. So this particular eclipse happens in Pisces. Pisces is a water sign. It's the last of the water signs and really has a lot to do with faith. I've done a whole series on the three decans of Pisces. I'll put some links below if you want to get a deeper understanding. A decan is just 10 degrees of the zodiac. So every sign has 30 degrees. So every sign has 3 decans. You can separate the sign into 3 parts. And this particular part of Pisces, the first 10 degrees of Pisces, the first decan, has to do with the spiritual seeker. Really pretty famous, or at least famous in my world. Ram Dass has his rising degree there. Excuse me, Ram Dass has his Venus there. She's exalted. Adyashanti, another spiritual teacher that I work with, pretty well known in spiritual circles, has his Jupiter, and Jupiter rules Pisces. He has his Jupiter in this part of the zodiac. So it may be bringing up stuff, I know it has for me, around our connection with the divine, around our connection with source. It may be asking us to step into faith in this part of our life. So for example, if your fifth house, excuse me, if Pisces is your fifth house of children and creativity, you may be asking, or these eclipse series may be asking you to let go in the Virgo area of our chart where the south node is, right? Let go of judgment, let go of analysis, let go of thinking you're in control and can figure everything out with your mind. That's Virgo energy. And move into faith. Things will work out. There's a pattern, a divine energy that guides us, and to, really deepen that faith, to connect with the divine in that area of your chart. And this is like the period, this eclipse is like the period at the end of the sentence of the theme of whatever you've been working through around those questions of faith, whatever new information you've been receiving around letting go of judgment and control and moving toward trusting that the universe is bigger than you and that you are to move into the flow of life. Pisces is a sign of the two fishes that are tied together. And there's something about going with the flow of the energy of life that is central to Pisces. So now let's bring up the chart so that we can deepen our understanding of what this eclipse might bring for us, because there's some really interesting aspects. And by aspect, I just mean connections between the planets, between planets in this eclipse. So we already talked about that the eclipse is happening at the full moon. We see this because the sun is opposite the moon in the chart. And eclipses happen when the nodes of the moon are within 15 degrees. We see here that this is the north node of the moon. It's just 5 degrees away from Pisces, excuse me, from the moon. And the first thing you notice, or at least that I noticed, was Uranus is in a T square to the eclipse energy. So he's squaring the moon and he's squaring the sun and Mercury here in the chart down in Virgo. A T square is an intense energy. Again, it's kind of like asking us to adapt and hold the tension of the opposites with the hope of some new meaning coming into our life. I say new meaning because one of the ways that we resolve a T-square is by looking to the energy on the opposite end of the apex, right? This is Uranus at the apex, and we have Sagittarius on the other side. Sagittarius is all about meaning making. So to me, there's something about this eclipse where our faith may be tested. We're trying to grapple with this conflict, this opposition between our judgment and trying to perfect things in the material world, Virgo down here at the bottom, and our desire to trust and have faith. Where can we find the middle ground, the middle path on that desire, or the conflict between those two energies? And Uranus, I have Uranus at the top of my chart, exactly conjunct the midheaven. It can be about sudden events, changes. Uranus was discovered during the French and American Revolution. It's about liberation, a desire to break free, a desire to shake up our old thought structures and let something new in. And here we have Uranus in the sign of Gemini, a sign that's all about information, gathering information and putting information out in the world. And oh, excuse me, I kind of moved that little chart over. It did that without my permission. Oh, and look at my poor little Mercury Cazimi sun is flying all over the place. Let's just bring that down. Technology. Anyway, Uranus squaring this um, Uranus squaring this eclipse just suggests that we could have a shakeup, some new energy, that Gemini energy, some new information could come into our life, coinciding with this eclipse, adding to its power. On top of that, we have Mercury Cazimi, the sun, at the moment of the eclipse. Mercury is within a degree. Cazimi just means a planet is in the heart of the sun. This is a superior conjunction. So there, and that just means the sun is furthest away from the earth. So it's like new information coming, it's more of an extroverted new information coming into our life. And so there's a replication. There's two themes of new information. We both have Uranus and Gemini bringing in new info. And then when Mercury is Cazimi the sun, it can be like, aha, light bulb, I get it now. So we see this exclamation point on the Pisces topics or area of our chart where we're being invited, I would say, to review, take in whatever information that we get with this eclipse, readjust, realign ourselves, connect with our purpose or our sense of what fits with our soul versus maybe what fits with our ego, or what, our fears can be part of the ego energy. So yeah, so again, Mercury Cazimi can bring sudden insights. I had Mercury Cazimi the sun when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. I always use that as an example. And things like that just kind of blow your mind around astrology. So do understand that you could be getting some new information, and that there'll be a need, because Pisces is this water sign that's quite sensitive, that we may have a little bit of emotional overwhelm. That when Uranus squares our moon, particularly when it's in Pisces, this sensitive sign, and the moon can represent our body, it can feel like a lightning bolt a little bit. You might have a little bit of nervous energy. I'm a big fan of meditation. I try not to push it on people, but it took me years to learn how to meditate or to feel comfortable meditating. So that's one of the reasons I try to hold back. Understand, don't beat yourself up if you can't do it. But and also developing a meditation practice or anything where you ground yourself in the earth is going to help you take in this energy, allow it to light you up, but not necessarily act out in the world on it until you have some perspective, right? We're being asked to balance the energy of this eclipse. And then when we do act, if we're going to act out of, as a result of some event that arises in our Pisces house, that we do so with a bit of self-reflection, because there's something about, with Uranus, and then the Uranus bringing shakeups, and then the moon being impacted because it's squared, there could be a tendency, um, if we're not grounded, to want to get out of the situation if it's a difficult situation, or to act quickly. And it's better if we can to sit and allow ourselves to be led by our inner guidance, that Pisces faith energy. Yeah, this feels like a big eclipse, particularly if you are somebody who is a mutable sign rising. The mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. And this is, of course, because if you're a mutable sign rising, the eclipse is going to hit that first house energy of who you are in a square or in opposition. So it's just going to be a bigger impact. On top of that, the eclipses are happening in around the fourth degree of Pisces. So if you have planets or points around 4 degrees of a mutable sign, those will also be being impacted. So you could have a bigger sort of oomph for you. So then let's talk about, give me 1 second. Um, oh, this is just, I just want to get this one slide in because I wanted to add it to flesh out a little bit of the meaning of that Pisces energy. This is the tarot card up at the top, the Eight of Cups that's associated with this eclipse. And as I said, the spiritual seeker, you can, Adyashanti and Ram Dass have their benefic planets there in really great positions. So there's something about that internal spiritual seeking that can be part of the energy. And here in the tarot card, you see it's the Eight of Cups. A man has turned away from what nourishes him in the outer world and gone inward, right? He's going up to the mountain. In fact, this card has an eclipse right on it, which is super interesting. You can see the way eclipses can sometimes bring in that energy of turning inward or reconnecting with the divine. So I just wanted to point that out for you. These other cards are just the cards associated with the Virgo part of the eclipse and the Gemini. I'll set that aside, but you might want to look at my Decan videos on Gemini 1 and Virgo 1 if you want a deeper understanding of the other energy in this particular eclipse. Okay, I had a little video issue, but I'm ready to continue now. It's a few hours later to talk about how this lunar eclipse may affect you personally. And that depends on the rising sign of your chart. If you don't know what your rising sign is, you can check out my video. I'll put a link below about how to pull up your birth chart on astroseek.com, and then you can look and see where your ascendant is in that chart. So if you're a Pisces rising, this eclipse is going to fall in your first house of self. The first house is who we are. The seventh house, which is opposite, has to do with partners. And you've been having eclipses in this first and seventh house axis over the last couple of years. And so exploring questions around who you are in relationship to partner. And with the North Node in your first house and this eclipse in the first house, something about who you are is being asked to grow and develop and devote yourself to your own inner understanding. With this eclipse in your first house, which has this energy of new information or sudden insights because of the Mercury Cazimi and the Uranus energy, it may be that you get some information that informs your growth. If you're in therapy, for example, maybe you have a big insight that allows you to step forward into some new part of who you are. If you're an Aquarius rising, this eclipse is going to fall in the second house. And the second house is the house that rises to become the first. In ancient times, there was this understanding symbolically that our efforts to support ourselves supported that first house. So second house has to do, oftentimes modern astrologers will talk about it, having to do with how you make a living. But it can also have to do with your livelihood. And I also think it has to do with your sense of your self-worth, because if you think about it, the efforts we make to support ourselves and provide resources to ourselves to survive, that's kind of this feedback loop that can help increase our sense of our own capacity, our own authority, our own self-worth. And so with the eclipse here, it may bring up questions around how you make money. You could have a sudden shift in how you make money. Something comes into your life. Of course, eclipses can also have things be taken away potentially. But this is a North Node lunar eclipse. The moon has to do with material energy, like the material world, whereas the sun is more intellectual and cerebral. So there could be a possibility of something new coming your way as far as ways of supporting yourself or livelihood or new information around how you work with making money, right? Or supporting yourself. If you're a Capricorn rising, then the eclipse is going to fall in your third house. This is the house of the goddess, the house where the moon has her joy. It has to do with that everyday lived life kind of energy, the wisdom we gain through lived experience. It can have to do with devotion and spirituality, that grounded way of relating to the divine. Whereas the ninth house, which is opposite the third, has more to do with intellectual wisdom. And that's the house of where the sun has its joy, and it's the house of the God. So it's kind of this different energy, the third house being more local. It can have to do with siblings and your family, your relatives, and your community. So if you have the North Node, excuse me, have the eclipse falling here, you could get some sudden information or insight around relationships with relatives and siblings. Maybe some new experience comes into your life to expand this part of your life. Yeah. So if you're Sagittarius rising, the eclipse is falling in your fourth house. That's home, family, roots, ancestry. It's the part of the chart that supports us. And maybe you'll be being asked to open your heart in some way around issues of family and ancestry. This eclipse is about faith in some way, about trusting that we don't have to manage things and around our home life for you because it's the fourth house, and can follow our intuition around decisions in that part of our life in some way, that we can look more deeply into ourselves. And so, yeah, maybe you get some information around, it could be around a move if you're in the middle of a potential move in your life. It could be around something if you're into or have issues coming up with your family of origin that you're working through. It could be opening to some new information that helps you sort through that part of your life. If you're a Scorpio rising, then this eclipse falls in your fifth house, which is the house of children and creativity. It's also the house of pleasure and joy. So it could bring some new experience, some new information around your kids if you have kids, right? If you don't have kids, but you have a creative practice, say you're in a band or you sing or you write, this could bring some sudden change around how you do that work, some sudden information that expands your mind, or that perhaps you have to sit with whatever information you learn and discern how it settles with you, how it aligns with the deeper part of who you are. Remember, we're talking about Pisces here and faith, and something about this eclipse asking us to let go of that Virgo judgment around um, the our creativity, and maybe go with the flow a little bit more and accept our path around our creative adventures or around our children, for example. If you're a Libra rising, this eclipse is going to fall in your sixth house of labor, service, employees. It's the house of Dilbert, I always say, the daily grind kind of energy. It can also be the house that has to do with health and pets. So it's a house that has to do in some ways with where we lack power. So if we're talking about a Pisces eclipse that has to do with faith, with letting go of trying to control our life in this part of our life, and maybe also has to do with getting some new information around our sixth house matters, then it could be, say, if you have health issues coming up or curiosities around your health, maybe you get some new information, or maybe you're being asked to have faith, not in a blind faith kind of way, but trusting um, your path around whatever issues may be coming up for you in this part of your life. The same with, if this could also as well have to do with your everyday work. If you're working day in and day out at a job, you may get some new information around who you are as an employee, how you work, and be asked to adapt that to that information, to take it in a way where you're trusting of your own capacity to find the way around whatever's coming up. It's a little bit hard sometimes, we're talking in abstract about this, but again, or in the abstract, again, this eclipse is like got this energy of you could get some information and need to grapple with it, need to balance the Virgo Pisces energy and come out on the end of trusting in your intuition and your inner guidance around how to move forward in this part of your life. If you're a Virgo rising, this eclipse falls in the seventh house of one-on-one partnership. So you may have over the last few years, with the eclipses falling in your first and seventh house of yourself and your partner, you may be going through experiences where you're being asked to let go around partnership in one way or another. Um, yeah. And, or excuse me, not let go around partnership, actually let go around your own sense of who you are, because the South Node is in the first house of who you are if you're a Virgo rising, and the North Node's in the seventh house. So it's possible over the last couple of years you've had some new people enter your lives. That can happen when the North Node goes through the seventh house, and these eclipses highlight that energy. So this is the closing or the conclusion to that energy, maybe bringing a little exclamation point on whatever experiences you've had. If you've had new people coming into your life, what is that about for you? And again, that can be a partner, a romantic partner, but could also be a therapist. Or if you're somebody who is a therapist, it could be your clients, for example. So any one-on-one relationship, and that's where the eclipse is lighting up for you. If you're a Cancer rising, then the eclipse falls in your, oh, excuse me, Miss Leo. Sorry, Leo. I know how much you are the center of the universe. And I say that lovingly because Leo is the sign ruled by the sun. And all the other planets revolve around the sun. So, Leo rising folks, you're here to shine for the rest of us. And this eclipse for you is falling in your eighth house. It's a North Node eclipse. Eighth house can have to do with inheritance, financial money, support we get from other people. It's also a house that can kind of have to do with anxiety, letting go, death, right? So it's complex. Sometimes energy in the eighth house can bring things around where, especially with the North Node, where you get a sudden boon, where something arises, or you get information that then leads you to grapple with questions around how you receive support from others, how you collaborate with others. And also, it could have to do with issues surrounding death. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing. There are many people who part of their life is centered around working with people, death dualism, things like that. I've had many clients that have eighth house energy, and it has more to do with their career or some interest they have. So hold it lightly. It doesn't mean anything bad is necessarily going to happen. If you're a Cancer rising, I got to go back to Leo. It's also could mean something comes into your life, right? Like a sudden inheritance or something like that, because it does have to do with financial situations. So see what happens, see what new information or new experiences come into your life around eighth house matters over the next few months. Cancer rising, this eclipse is going to fall in your ninth house. That's the house of God. It's the house opposite the third. The ninth house is where the sun has its joy. It's about how we expand our consciousness, religion, philosophy, international travel. With a North Node eclipse, there it could be all of a sudden you get some information, some insight, and you decide you're going to take that trip that you never took, right? Because it's a North Node eclipse, it can bring new things into your life. Or if you're a younger person and you're considering going to graduate school or something like that, over the last couple of years, you may have been having questions or thinking about or considering or beginning um, a graduate school program, right? And so this could be a concluding sort of a conclusion to that energy where you reach some sense of finality or some understanding or insight about what you want to do around that ninth house energy. So if you're a Gemini rising, then this eclipse is going to fall in your 10th house of career, basically. Action, what we do out in the world, what we're known for. And Uranus is in that 10th house right now, squaring the eclipse. So that's kind of interesting. So you could already be in a place where you're having some shakeups around your profession um, over, and that may have begun just a few months ago when Uranus finally entered Gemini for good, but it'll continue for the next 7 years. So be ready. There's a pretty good chance for Gemini risings that over the next 7 years, you're going to have, oh, excuse me, let me double back on that. Scratch that, reverse. If you're a Gemini rising, it's falling in your 10th house. Uranus is in your first house. So the eclipse may bring new things, new information around what you do out in the world. But Gemini, the shaking up energy of Uranus is happening in your first house. So something about who you are is undergoing a radical shift over the next 7 years. That's just oftentimes what happens. I've seen for folks who have Uranus enter their first house, all of a sudden they begin to play with or experiment with or want to break free around how they appear to the world. So you can think about that as well. If you're a Taurus rising, then this eclipse is falling in your 11th house. That's a house that has to do, a lot of people will say friends, but in some ways it's not intimate friends. Intimate friends is more kind of third house energy. 11th house is friends that we get involved in doing creative things with. It's the house opposite the fifth house, which is the house of individual creativity. The 11th house is the house of creative projects with other people, with groups, with organizations. I have a lot of 11th house energy, and I do a lot of fairs where there's, 40 other vendors and we're all doing different types of readings and things like that. So that's kind of the 11th house energy. It can also have to do with benefactors and people that support us. It can be a really positive house. It's the house of good spirit. So with the North Node eclipse happening there, there may be some information that comes to you with this Mercury Cazimi and Uranus square that shakes you up and changes your thinking around the creative things you do out in the world with other people. There could be a sudden shift or something that comes to you, so maybe some new opportunity to work with a new group, or maybe you decide you're done with another group and then that allows you to step forward into something else that excites you even more. And finally, if you're an Aries rising, then this eclipse is falling into your 12th house. The 12th house is kind of a hidden house. It has to do with things that are behind the scenes. A lot of times I'll have clients with their son in the 12th house, and maybe they shine in the world by supporting other people, by being in the background. They can be in a very high position. I just did a reading for a woman who was the chief of staff for somebody at a major corporation, and she had her son in the 12th house. The 12th house can also have to do with what's unknown to us. Sometimes things that are unknown to us can come to bite us in the butt a little bit. It's that idea of the unconscious. When you think about sometimes you just do the thing without thinking, you're like, why did I do that? And then you realize that it came out of some unconscious pattern from your past. So the 12th house can kind of have to do with that as well. With the North Node eclipse there, if you're somebody who's engaged in therapy or anything like that, that can be kind of a 12th house thing. Maybe you get some new insight that really allows you to explore the unknown for yourself. It could also be, if you are somebody who's spiritual, I do believe I say I believe because Hellenistic astrologers sometimes maybe don't think of the 12th house as spiritual, but there is a quality of the 12th house that has to do with solitude, with reflection, it's the house of monks in my mind. People with a lot of energy there sometimes can be a little introverted or enjoy time alone for reflection, right? So it could also be if you have a spiritual practice, maybe you have some new opening or insight around that particular practice. Yeah, so I think that's good. Thank you for bearing with me and my video antics. Yeah, shit happens, as they say. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, again, it'd be great if you could like and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video series. I'm still working on what it's going to be after this, after I concluded that amazing Deccan series. I'm playing around with some new ideas. I've been studying with a couple of great teachers in the traditional astrology area, Ben Dykes, as well as Ali Alomi. Ali Alomi does a lot of stuff around uh, the soul in the birth chart in Arabic astrology. So that might be where I'm leaning for my next project. Anyway, stay tuned. We'll talk soon.